Hey there, Vernacular Faithful. Redcoat here. And I wanted to comment a little bit on what's going on with Harada leaving Bandai Namco, which, that happened a while ago, and starting a new company, VS Versus, which is, if I'm understanding correctly, basically subcontracted under SNK. Like it's his company, but he is likely going to be making a lot of games for SNK. I think that there's probably a lot of wiggle room there. I don't know all of the logistics, and I'm not going to pretend to fully grasp the fullness of that situation. But it is something of note. And what I wanted to actually look back at is other developers who left their their mothership companies to kind of do their own thing, kind of why, kind of look at those patterns, and then look at what's happening with Harada, and then also step off of that into you, if you are a developer or someone who is in this space trying to do their thing, either make a new company on your own or deviate out from under the wings of another company to make your own thing. Just kind of talk a little bit about what some of this says. As a rule, I say a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others and the victories of others too. So, without further ado, let's first briefly go over the whole Harada thing. So, Harada left Bandai Namco, and this was during Tekken 8, which did not hit well with the company that it was target with the demographic that it was targeted at, specifically fighting gamers. Like they played the game, and it didn't appeal to their sensibilities, specifically that it started out really well, mind you. Like it was going very strong, and then a patch came out, and it just it turned the balance kind of on its head, and the players it turned the balance on the head. The players were willing to give it a chance. Another patch came. The balance stayed where it was, even though the company said that they were going to change things, and the players just were out. And in the midst of that, Harada leaves, and he doesn't cite anything about it being necessarily connected to that, but you can say what you want about it. Like me personally, there's some correlation there. It feels like there might have been some frustration, particularly in my opinion, I feel like there might have been some reversals of decisions that he wanted to make, and there might have also been some ignoring of decisions that he wanted to make. And make no mistake, Harada, as a figure in Bandai Namco, is a producer, kind of an executive producer type. And but more than that, he is a voice. So what that means is, within the annals of the company, if there's a project that needs to move forward and he has faith in the project, he will fight to get it to happen. So he will make the monetary statements like, hey, we can make money off of this if we do this, this, and that. This is a strong thing, but we have to maintain the heart of it, because fighting for an idea isn't just getting it made, it's also making sure that the core of it stays intact. And so he was a champion for Tekken. He might have been a champion for a couple of other things, but Tekken in specific was one of the big ones for him. And he even has gone on record to mention that he was kind of, I guess, aggrieved a little bit that Soul Calibur didn't have a champion for it on the inside, like not as stable a one as he was for Tekken. And that's part of the reason why Soul Calibur is kind of spotty across the history, as far as like it, sticking to its guns, doing this and that. Um, Whereas Tekken has a very, very, this is its identity. This is what it does. This is when it comes out. We've got another one coming out. Here's what Tekken is. Here's what Tekken isn't. And while it might not necessarily chalk all of that up to Harada, I do think that there's a large part of that that is him, particularly when it comes to fighting the corpos who just want to make money, um, and telling them, look, if you want to make money, you have to keep the heart. If you don't keep the heart, the blood doesn't flow. And the blood being the money, of course. Now, in this case, looking at other people who've done like similar things, right? So you have Hideo Kojima, who left Konami to make Death Stranding, known for Metal Gear, the Metal Gear series. Well, that's the thing that he's most known for is the Metal Gear series, and it's that reputation is what he used to kind of launch off and make his own company, and it was because he was getting stifled creatively, and he wanted to do his own thing. But the even though the issue is like you have to kind of balance it when you're an artist, where you're like, I want to do my own thing, but I need the money to do it. And so he was sticking around with Konami because they gave him the money to do it. But once he realized that, wait, I can just people know me. People know me. Like they know me. They know what I can do. I can just do this on my own. And then he did, right? And one of the earlier people to do that was KJ Inafune, although KJ Inafune did not have nearly as much success as Kojima, which Kojima Productions is still doing their thing. KJ Inafune is Capcom, Mega Man specifically. He was one of the producers, if I remember correctly, with that. And so he's in a similar position to Harada of I'm going to fight for the IP. I want it to continue. I'm going to try and convince the higher ups that this is what we need to do to keep it going, kind of deal. Like that's kind of his deal. Um, that's kind of the deal of being a producer in a company. It's like you get the money to get the thing going, and you convince the people that have the money to put it on your project. But I digress. He left, and he was like, okay, people want Mega Man. They haven't been giving Mega Man. They won't let us make a Mega Man. So let's go and make a Mega Man in all but name, right? And so he went off to try and make Mighty Number Nine. Not try, he did make Mighty Number Nine. But the problem was that there were some issues with the Kickstarter. Specifically, the Kickstarter went well, but it was the he kind of overstepped on budgeting, and then there was some planning stuff and things that just didn't quite work out. I think overall it was just a little bit of unfamiliarity with running the wholeness of the operation, rather than getting everything, rather than being the guy to get everything in place to do it, but specifically knowing, yes, we have this team, they can do this, they can't do that, they can do this, but they can't do that, so we have to make our decisions specifically. But that's more hearsay. That's just me looking from the outside, looking in, seeing the situation. Anyway, that's a tangent. We also have well, yeah, those are the three that I wanted to talk about in the Japanese sector. In the American sector, you have people like Bob Whitehead, David Crane, Larry Kaplan, and Alan Miller, who formed Activision, which, although Activision as probably this big hyper corporate thing that's eating companies left and right, initially they were formed in response to the same kind of thing that they are now. They were formed in response to Atari, not not respecting royalties and other things with regards to their developers. So they made their own company to kind of handle that differently. So it's rather interesting to see that they've kind of come full circle now. There's also Alex Hutchison, who left Ubisoft to make a company called Typhoon, although Typhoon has since been absorbed by Google. So go with take that as you will. You also have Jason West and let's see, let me make sure I get that name right. That's Jason West and Vince Zampella, who formed Respawn Entertainment, and they made Titanfall and Apex Legends. As far as I'm aware, Apex Legends is still going. They were very successful with what they did. They formed the company Infinity Ward, and specifically, they left Activision, the company I just mentioned, to do their own thing. It's almost like it's a cycle, huh? Uh, you also have the some of the most well-known people, at least in the programming side of the game development space, in the form of John Carmack and John Romero, who formed id Software, which the game they made was Doom. You know, the one that you can that everyone's trying to find the next smallest thing to run it on, like run it on a toaster or something. They left the company that barely anybody knows about nowadays called Softdisk to do their own thing. Now, granted, I don't think Softdisk wasn't necessarily a gaming company, but these guys basically wanted to do their own creative stuff. And well, just read Masters of Doom, and you'll recognize just how determined these two were. Um, not to leave them out, there was also Tim Schafer who left Double Fine Product, well, who made Double Fine Productions after leaving LucasArts. Um, and he's known for Psychonauts specifically. Like that's his big claim to fame. I think he's still doing things even now, but I haven't been keeping track of the guy. At any rate, we've got a lot of people who kind of, you know, leave the larger thing to kind of do their own bit. And um, I think it's important to kind of recognize that this is kind of a cycle. But I think it's also important to recognize kind of the turn of the industry where we're at right now, because in my estimation, I think we're seeing a lot of the larger corporations starting to flounder when it comes to, well, starting to, they are floundering with regards to creative direction as they realize that, well, how do I put it? A company isn't just made to make money. I know that's what everyone says in big business. Like that's the line is the reason for a company to exist is to make money, but that's simply not the case, at least not to me. To me, a company is made to bring people together to do something that you couldn't do by yourself. That's why it's called a company. That's what it means to be in good company, is to be accompanied by people who can do cool stuff that you couldn't do or could help you do stuff that you couldn't do or otherwise. That's the reason you form a company. The money is actually a side effect of the company being successful and helps keep it doing what it does. Now, I digress. When we're talking about Harada and his thing, where he's formed the Versus Company, and if I'm understanding it correctly, it's kind of a relationship deal where SNK money was used to form the company, which creates a an initial relationship between Harada and the Versus Company and SNK to the point to the idea that it's going to be how would I put it, a subcontracting relationship where SNK is going to have some products that Harada will, you know, be like, yeah, I'll make that. That sounds cool. But I get creative direction. My team's going to do it, and you guys can tell me a little bit about what to do. But we're gonna do this our way, kind of deal. Because I know that's one of the things Harada mentioned when he split off was, hey, I want to get back to being in control of what I'm making. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of the sense I got out of it. It was just I want to be back in control of what I'm making, and I want to be working with people I trust to make the things that I like. Like at the end of the day, that's what any artist wants. And I think one thing for Harada, in so much as he got moved up into positions where he was, and I think he was doing a good thing, you know, got moved up into a position where he could fight for other artists within his company. Um, he didn't necessarily get to be an artist himself, not directly. I kind of feel like he missed that, and I feel like that's why the death of one of his closer development friends really hit him as much as it did. I'm trying to remember his name. Was it Itagaki? It might have been Itagaki. Yes, Tomonobu Itagaki. I believe that that really hit him because, you know, say what you will of the man, he did what he wanted to. He had a very he if he wanted to make a thing, he'd be like, "I'm gonna do it. We're gonna do it. I'm not going to make any apologies." It's like if we want boobas in there, we're gonna put boobas in there. If we want it to be bloody and violent, it's gonna be bloody and violent. If we want it to be fun, we're gonna make it be fun. I don't care what you think. We're going to make it happen, and trust me, someone's gonna love it. Like that's in my mind, that's a little bit of that Tomonobu Itagaki energy. And God rest his soul. I think he I think he is more inspirational in the Japanese sector than some might think. At the very least, he left an impression on Harada, and so I think I wouldn't be surprised if, well, I think he's actually cited that this is a big part of why he decided to go. But anyway, so pursuing creative freedom. Um, and one of the things that's interesting about the way that Harada has done it, when we compare it to some of the people of the past, where they just kind of set out on their own, make a new company, grassroots this thing. But the way Harada has done it is he's basically positioned himself like a businessman would, which is he's not just saying I'm going to do a thing because I want to do it. He's looking at it as like, who can I service? Who needs my help? How can I use that to gain the funding to do the thing that I really want to do? Like that's how a businessman thinks. Is yeah, I got this big thing that I want to do, but nobody really needs that. But there's a need that I can service with the skills that I have. And so, and again, this is kind of conjecture, but it makes sense to me that that would be the thought process of let's go to SNK, let's talk to them. I know that they want to do stuff in the versus space. They've got a lot of old properties, which if you're paying attention, you've noticed that they're starting to bring those back. They've got a lot of old properties to work with. And Harada's got a lot of fighting game knowledge. And not to mention, if we go back across the history of SNK, they've tried to do 3D fighters and haven't had as good of a reputation there. Like it hasn't worked as well. Like they've tried to do 3D versions of King of Fighters and they didn't quite work as well. And so they, went back to their basics, stuck with the 2D, and they did great. But that doesn't mean that the desire went away. So having someone like Harada, who has tons of experience with the space, understands the rhythms of it, understands how to build intricately complex characters. Because Tekken is, you look at a character in that game, they are intricate. There's a lot to designing one Tekken character. And he's been a part, or at least influenced, the development of over 50 of these kinds of characters. And that's to say nothing of what influences he may or may not have had on the Soul Calibur team and other things along the way. I always consider Soul Calibur to be a successor to the engine that Tekken created, with Tekken being a successor to the engine that Virtual Fighter um, stepped forward on. Well, that second one is not has not as concrete a connection, but that just in my mind that's how I see it. At any rate, that's kind of the situation. Create he looks for a need that he can fill, and that gives him what he needs to build the things that he wants to. And what's interesting is there's another developer that I can think of who has a similar arrangement, and that is Masahiro Sakurai. Now, Masahiro Sakurai, he's never actually, even though he is connected very closely to Nintendo, if you actually look at his history, he's never been directly under their sway. He's actually always been kind of at either working at a separate company that works under them or owning his own company that works under them. Specifically, first it was HAL Laboratories, and then it was Sora. And for those of you who are uninitiated, Masahiro Sakurai is Kirby. He made Kirby and Smash Brothers. Those are the two most recognizable properties under him. There are plenty of others, but it turns out that those ones just kind of overshadow everything for a lot of reasons. Um, and but yeah, he operates in this position of a subcontractor. So what's interesting about being a subcontractor, and I've kind of alluded to this with the idea of Harada with SNK and everything, is that you don't just have that deal of you're not directly paid by the group. Like there's basically a bid. Usually there's a bid that you make, and you're like, okay, we're gonna need this much money to make this thing, but we also need a profit. So the bid's gonna go up by 30%. So we have that profit margin so that everybody can have some take home, and we're going to make this thing in this period of time. Uh, you know, give us some leeway, 50%, give us some 50% runway, something like that. And then they're like, okay, we're going to go. But one of the things that you have as your leverage when you are a subcontractor is that you're the one that's actually physically making the thing. So the higher ups can say, yeah, we want this, and we want this, and we want this. But ultimately, you're the one that decides whether it goes in. Now, Nintendo has notoriously been very, very ironclad about this stuff. Like, I think to Silicon Knights and Eternal Darkness, where a part of the reason why Eternal Darkness was so good and the company Silicon Knights wouldn't quite go on to make another really banger hit was because of the oversight of Nintendo. And you'll see that with a number of their projects when they've got an IP, they value the IPs so much that they will have their clause just in there, just like no, no, don't you can't do that, can't do that. We're only going to let you go so far. And we can see the results of not doing that with something like DMC, where Ninja Theory was given the Devil May Cry property, and they went in an entirely different direction. And me personally, I kind of dug it. I know a lot of people didn't, but I kind of dug it. Um, it has its moments, I should say, but it was very different. And that's what happens when you do outsourcing. There's a little bit of your baby that you're giving control to someone else. So um, with Sora Limited and that sort of deal, you have Masahiro Sakurai in this position of where he can really dictate a lot of stuff what's going on, and he also has the weight of he has this whole team that is subservient to him. Well, not subservient, but that is under him, which means he gets to direct them. He gets to make creative choices. And if the larger company doesn't play ball, well, he can just say, okay, well, we're just going to take our ball and go somewhere else. You try and build this yourself. I mean, that's a thing that's a power that you have as a subcontractor. Um, but so Harada is in a similar position. Now, his relationship is a lot closer, I think, because his company was made with SNK money, allegedly. That's my understanding. So there's kind of this understanding, I think, of SNK's got some fighting game properties that they're gonna want to bring back, and SNK has also had aspirations to go into 3D, and Harada knows his way about both of those things. So it makes sense that when SNK is like, "Hey, we want you to make this," Harada, in his understanding of business talks and negotiation, would probably be like, "Yeah, we'll make that. You guys did me a solid, so I'm going to do you a solid," kind of deal. Um, but make no mistake, it's his company still. Like, as far as I understand, when the ink dries, he owns that company, which means that all the assets, all the team, that's weight in his corner. So if heaven forbid he's asked to do something that does not align with his ethos, he at least has some ability to push back. And I think that's something that Honestly, I think that's something he was missing while he was working at Bandai Namco. At any rate, that's just kind of my read of the situation. I'm actually very much looking forward to seeing what Harada does under with this company. I think there's a lot I think there's a lot there. But there's one last thing that I wanted to hit, and I realized I made this list at the beginning, so I need to hit it at the end here, which is specifically, what about you? You, Mr. Designer person or whatever, that YouTube brought this in front of you. I don't know if you're a designer. Maybe you just like games. Maybe you just like black people and I have a sterlingly lovely face and it put it in front of you. In which case, well, thank you. You can just tell me I'm handsome in the comments, I guess. But either case, um, the what does this mean for you? Talking about all the patterns that we've seen here. And what I will say is that, a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So let's say you wanted to make a game and you don't know where your funding is going to come from. And I mean, the natural thought in the current day and age is, well, let's run a Kickstarter. And there's a whole thing that you have to go through to do that right, right? You got to build up your audience, probably make a Discord for them to talk to each other, get your email list so that you can remind them when things are happening. Um, and probably go early access so that you can get money to run the project while you're developing it, which is a pretty crazy development hack, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. Um, maybe set up a Patreon so that people that are on board at the beginning can show their support and keep showing their support in, small amounts. And once you've done that, then you go live with a Kickstarter. Well, you don't go live. You announce a Kickstarter probably about 2 months in advance, maybe 2 or 1 month in advance, so that all the people that you've gathered behind you can be ready to push the button when it goes live. So you get that first 30% immediately, float over the trough, and then get the last bits on those last 10 days because that's how the activity on that stuff works. Anyway, long tangent there. That's one way to do it. The other angle is the needs based methodology, which is kind of what Harada did. And now I will say that Harada also has a reputation that precedes him, which allows him to do this, which is specifically saying, you need something. You want to make games. I know how to run teams to make these games. You should give me the resources to make those games for you. Now, to be sure, Harada's not the only person that's done this. As I mentioned, Masahiro Sakurai has done that. Into Creates, a company, the company behind Mega Man Zero, has done this over the years. If I'm not mistaken, and I don't want to misattribute it, uh, well, I won't. I will, for fear of misattribution, I won't actually mention the thing, but I will say that also the company behind Shantae, they also did a similar dealing where they've made a number of tie-in products for Disney over the years. And way back in the day when Capcom was first rising up, they did a similar deal. They made a bunch of tie-in products for Disney with some of the most beloved games in classical gaming history being made from their stuff, particularly what is it, DuckTales, which the mechanics of that game live on in Shovel Knight and many, many other imitators of the form. I digress. That's another way to approach this: is find somebody who needs a game made, get your team together, get your team of experts together, and then say, we can build this thing for you. Now you'll need a proof of concept probably, and that's something that you'll likely have to do on your free time while you've got a day job. But if you can get that first playable built and it's evidence of something really cool, then there's a likelihood that you can meet the need. But the important thing is, though, that there's a need that the company has. So, like, say, if there's a company, the group that needs educational stuff made, then you go to them and you say, we can make educational games. Hey, take a look at this game that teaches math, that teaches multiplication tables with a rabbit, um, math rabbit. If you know, you know. Um, but that's kind of the dealy there. So for you as a aspiring developer or designer, there's definitely something to be said for just making the game you want in your spare time, and then just putting it out there for the people to see, and letting the whims of the waves hit. And but if you want to approach it from an angle where you want to be maybe a little comfortable while you're doing it and be able to focus on it entirely, setting yourself up so that you're servicing a need is a way to do it. Now, I say all of this as a failed game developer. Like, I've made my own game company and I've released two games over the years, but I still consider it failed because we didn't make that much money. Like, granted, we didn't break the bank either because we didn't take out any loans or anything. It was all bootstrapped, which I'm still happy about. But that is all to say that, uh, at the end of the day, you're making something for people, and that means that you want to kind of meet them at their wants and needs. And if you've got people that already know what they want, then you can meet their needs so that they give you the stuff so that you can meet your needs. It's kind of that whole transactional dealing. But I digress. That's all I've got to say here, and take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, I'm not exactly what you'd call a super successful developer. But at any rate, that's all I got to say. I'll call it off for now.